Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your king, King Clifford Jefferson, of Senator Godfrey, the fifth kind of Van Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. It is October the 5th, 2023, which is the birth year 2973. I come with another marvelous lecture. Uh, and this lecture is going to be about uh, cosmogony. We understand that cosmogony is the understanding of the universe and how it was created, which according to the Torah, uh, it's about God's creation and God's relationship with the creation, which is us. All right. But that's a metaphor for understanding your connection with God, i.e., our creator on a biological level. All right. A metaphysical level. All right. And this is what needs to be brought forth to bring forth clarity to our understanding in the unfoldment of ourselves. All right. So for all those who viewed the previous lecture that I did in regards to the ascension, the transition, the rapture, the afterlife, the seventh millennium, new age, all this, all these terms and things we use to denote to this particular transition is going to be explained now. So without further ado, let's get started. This lecture is going to be on behalf of my new guide, our manual for the English Theological Church. And the title of it is called Cosmogony Says Time is Up. Once again, Cosmogony says time's up. For all those who are Anglo-Saxon Berbers, time's up. You must have an understanding and an overstanding about the fulfillment of the prophecy that concerns you. All right. We're not going to discuss it. I'll be doing a class on it probably either tomorrow or the next day, just to give you a formal reading of the material that it created out of the content that was already here. The scripture said, I didn't come to change the law, but fulfill the law. So everything that is within this pamphlet, or i.e. this guide, this manual, was already written. I just made sense of what was written. Okay? That's the purpose of what the Talmud tells us in the Midrash, the Talmud, the Midrash, but it's pertaining to the Zohar. Zohar deals with the cosmogony, which means the unfoldment of God's creation. All right. This is what the Pentateuch, the Torah, the Bible, this is what they're talking about. All right. And it's all about the ascension. All right. The Egyptians knew about it. The Greeks knew about it. The Dogon knew about it. Even theorists, scholars, uh, those who understand astrobiology or astrophysics have yet to come to the clarity of its true intent of our participation in this event that's going to be the new awakening of our transition from three-dimensional to fourth-dimensional, which I'll discuss today. So without further ado, let's get started. Bear with me. Let's get started. As you can see, circle. You see a circle. We know circle, the family crescent codes for the surname Circle is symbolic of a church. Okay. As you can see here, family crescent coats of arms. The family crescent coats of arms for the surname Circle, right? We know the circle is a geometric figure, a geometric shape. All right. That also is discussed in what we call physics, geometry. All right. Mathematics. It can be used in a bunch of uh, what they call theories that are used to explain the unknown. Okay, used to explain the unknown. So as we can see, the surname Circle is actually, as we can see displayed on the family crest and coat of arms, it shows that of what we call a church. We call it a monastery. So we're going to define the word church. Church. The Anglo-Saxon name church comes from the family having residing near a church. The surname church is derived from the Old English word "cherais," which is itself derived from the late Greek word "kyrikon," which means house of the Lord. Okay, house of the Lord. Once again, the Anglo-Saxon name church comes from the family having resided near a church. The surname church is derived from the Old English word "cherais," which is itself derived from the late Greek word "kyrikon," which means house of the Lord. So as we can see, the Greeks refer to it as Kirk or Kurikon, which means house of the Lord. Okay, we refer to it as Cyrus or Cyrus, which also synonymous with the word or the term Cyrus. And as you can see, the symbol for the church on the family crest and coat of arms is a K9. Okay, it's a K9. Very, very important. Why do I say this? Because we know the word Kirk is also the word Cyrus, and Cyrus was a Greek deity as well. So Cyrus, Ceres, which is the Anglo-Saxon word, is where the word church derived from. Is also called Cyrus. This is that family crest and coats of arms. It's available in England and Scotland. The English surname Cyrus is of several possible origins. Firstly, is thought to be a patronymic origin deriving from the given name of the father of the original bearer. The person named Cyrus is related to the Greek name Kyros, which is thought to mean far-sighted, son, or lord. Alternatively, the name may be related to the English surname Cyrus, which is derived from the Middle English "seer," meaning master. Finally, the name may come from the place name St. Cyrus, located in Scotland, or St. Cyrus, located in Britain. So we see the surname Cyrus, what's called Cyrus, which is the Anglo-Saxon word, or as they say, Ceres, is also synonymous with Sirius. Okay? It's also synonymous with Sirius. Now let's look at the word Cyrus. The English surname Cyrus is of several possible origins. First, it is thought to be a patronymic word of origin, be of patronymic origin, derived from the given name of the father of the original bearer. The person named Cyrus is related to the Greek name Kairos, which is thought to have meant far-sighted, son, or Lord. Alternatively, the name may be related to the English surname Sears, which is derived from the Middle English seer, which means master. Okay, so Kairos, Cyrus, seer are all derivatives of the surname church, which we'll go back to. Let's get that out of the way. Church. And we see church, Cyrus, Cyrus, or Cyrus, or Sirius are all the same word because we know it all deals with the house of the Lord. It all denotes to what we call the son. We know Cyrus is a son, right? And we know sons, at the end of a son's life, it brings form to what we call a nebula, which Cyrus is a nebula. It's a white dwarf. It's called a white dwarf. All this is going to be explained in my pamphlet or my guide. All right, but I'm just going through it right now. As you can see on the family crest coat of arms, you have a dog there. Okay, we know Cyrus, Cairo, uh, uh, Kairon means house of the Lord. Let's just go through one more time. Church, Anglo-Saxon word. In English means Sarais. In the Greek, it means Chiron, which means house of the Lord, which brings us to Cyrus, which means the same thing according to the etymology of the word. You know, etymology was created by Isidore Seville. Cyrus, the person name related to the Greek name Kairos, which is thought to mean far-sighted, son, or Lord, or Sirius, which means master. So it's all synonymous to the church. And we know church is synonymous with the word circle. As you can see here. And is associated with the barbarian tribes. All right, barbarian tribes. Barbarian tribes are different from Berber tribes because you had Berber tribes and you had nomadic Berbers. We're not going to get that discussion or wordplay right there for the simple fact I'm down to show not just from the colonies or the tribes at their heightened point, but I'm trying to take it back to a genealogy and the descent of inheritance that was there prior to that existence on that plane. Okay? On that plane. We are on what we call the three-dimensional plane, subject to the laws that govern this three-dimensional plane. All right? Our ancestors didn't come from this three-dimensional plane. They're the ones who created this plane, and that's what I aim to prove. All right? So, and I'm going to do that through what we call geometry. All right? So we know circle, church, and chancel. Cyrus. Cyrus. We know that Egyptians knew about Cyrus all the way back in the times of Queen Tuya, the mother of Thutmose III. All right. They knew about Cyrus, it was his wife Doris, and the effects on the Nile. Okay, when it flooded. All right, and knew the effects of the rising of the morning star, which they call Cyrus A. Jesus was also called the morning star. Okay, the morning star. And since Cyrus is the brightest star, which I seen last night, it looked just like Cyrus. All right, and we know Cyrus is a part of Orion's constellation. All right, it's part of Orion's constellation. We know that the planetary nebula of Orion is a star system. Is a star system. So since Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, and his name is derived from the Greeks, i.e. Sirius, which means glowing or scorching or illuminating. Okay? Illuminating. Sirius is almost twice as bright as Canopus, the next brightest star. Okay? Consisted of a main sequence star of spectral type AO or A1 termed Sirius A and a faint white dwarf. Once again, a faint white dwarf. A white dwarf occurs when a star collapses. The gravitational pull of a star collapses, and that's where nebulas are formed from, i.e., planetary nebulas. You can even, when a star collapses, it can either become a supernova or what they call a white dwarf. All right, a white dwarf. All my manual, or my book, or my guide, whatever you want to call it, will explain that. Let's move further. So all this is about the church. We know Jesus was crucified, right? Which is called, we call it the crucifixion. All right. This is what the whole purpose of the church for, to bring forth the mysteries concerning the crucifixion of Christ. The crucifixion of Christ. All right. So let's discuss that. Crucifixion. Now, from an abstract, from a concrete, i.e., biology. Crucifixion or Corpus Hypercubus is a 1954 all-on canvas painted by Salvatore Dali, a non-traditional surrealist portrait of the crucifixion. It depicts Christ on a polyhedron net of a tesseract hypercube. It is one of the best-known paintings from later periods of his career. Everybody can see it. It's a hypercube. This hypercube represents fourth dimension. All right? Fourth dimension, from 0 dimension to 2 dimension to 3 dimension where we are now to fourth dimension. All right? This is what this represents. All right? An ascension to a higher plane. We know a plane is a surface. A plane or a surface is 2-dimensional. All right? 3-dimensional denotes length, width, and height. For fourth dimension, it's contrast to that. 3-dimensional is the transition through fourth dimensional by way of a time continuum. Right? By a time continuum, by way of what we call a fuse. By way of what we call a fuse from a 3-dimension. That's what we call space-time. Space and time. If you're in space, you're subject to time. Right? Because it's called space-time. In space, what they call outer space. They call it outer space. All right? We're going to discuss these terms. Let's get to it. Back out of here. Let's read the background. During the 1940s and 1950s, Dali's interest in traditional surrealism diminished and he became fascinated with nuclear science, okay? He was fascinated with nuclear science. We know nuclear science involves physics, right? We know nuclear science deals with nuclear energy, all right? Nuclear energy. And so in this case, we're concerned by the nuclear DNA of somebody called, or this entity called Jesus Christ. It says that he became fascinated with the nuclear science, feeling that thenceforth the atom was his favorite food for thought. You know, atom is a molecule. The atomic bombing at the end of World War II left a lasting impression. His 1951 essay, Mystical Manifesto, introduced an art theory he called nuclear mysticism, all right, that combined his interest in Catholicism, mathematics, science, and Catalan cultures in an effort to reestablish classical values and techniques which he extensively utilized in what they call the Corpus Hypercubus. All right, so that means the Catholics knew about this. The Catholic Church knew about this. The Catholic Church is the Latin Church i.e., which the Latin cross originated from, which you see Jesus Christ suspended on. The Latin cross. Okay. So you see a hypercube of Jesus Christ, which is also called the Tesseract. All right. It's also called the Tesseract. And the Tesseract is an example of what we call the fourth dimension, which is the future. Because we know that all dimensions are subject to time. We know time is past, present, which we're in now. You know what I'm saying? We're in the present now. We're not in the future, because the future will be fourth dimensional, where three dimensional cannot inhabit. Time can be accompanied in all dimensions. Past, present, which we are in now, in the future, which Jesus is trying to warn us about. The hereafter, time immemorial, not mortal life, but immemorial life. And immemorial life, i.e., time immemorial, can best be understood through your memory, through your mind. Okay, your mind is under the power of what we call neuroscience, right? Neuroscience deals with neurons. Neurons deal with neurotransmitters. All right, neurotransmitters need a receptor. You are the receptor by way of what we call nuclear DNA, which can be a part, which we call a part of what we call a nuclear matrix, which now through that nuclear matrix, through the nuclear DNA, allows the what we call the genome, or what we call mitochondrial DNA, to get the information it needs to what we call, or provide what we call cell division, which is what they call binary fusion. All right, for cells to divide from 0 dimension to 3-dimensional, where we are now. Okay, so let's deal with this. Crucifixion. All right, we're going to come back to the crucifixion, as well as the Latin church, which is responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, based off the Latin cross and based off the symbolism of what the Latin cross represents. All right, so let's not go into the abstract. Let's understand it in the concrete, and the best way to understand that in concrete is do what we call geometry. All right, geometry. We know geometry means to measure. To measure. And we know that measurement of this terrestrial sphere also means to measure the spheres that gave birth to the terrestrial sphere. All right, and that's the astrosphere. That's the astrosphere. All right, that goes back to point energy, point zero, or point zero dimension. All right, so let's go space time. In physics, space time. All right, so you should understand physics because you're in space and time. We know time is the past, which brings forth your memory to know the past, not the future. We ain't in the future yet. The future cannot manifest until you get there. All right, until you get there. And the future they're talking about in regards to that with different from 3-dimensional is 4-dimensional due to time continuum. All right, so it says in physics, space-time is a mathematical model. It's a model that fuses the 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time into a single 4th-dimensional continuum. You hear that? To a single 4th-dimensional continuum. Now, how is this done? This explains Albert Einstein theory, special theory of relativity. All right, this depends upon what we call general theory of relativity, because general theory of relativity involves what we call space-time. All right, space-time, which we call outer space, which we call the expansion of the universe, which they term a gravitational singularity, space-time singularity, or what we just call singularity. And in the Talmud, on the Zohar, they call it cosmogony. the study of the universe. All right, the study of the universe. It says in physics, once again, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses the three dimensions of space and the one dimension of time into a single fourth dimension continuum. Until the turn of the 20th century, the assumption had been that the three-dimensional geometry of the universe, its description in terms of location, shape, distance, and direction, was distinct from the measurement of when events occurred within the universe. All right. However, space and time took in a new meaning with the Lorentz transformation and special theory of relativity, i.e., zero matter energy equivalence, i.e., special theory of relativity, i.e., E equals mc squared, matter constant the speed of light. We know light, we talk about light speed. All right, that's talking about light speed. All right, which we'll get into in a second. All right, so we know that space-time is three-dimensional fused into a fourth-dimensional based off that one-dimensional time. And we know time is subject to what we call past and present, which we're in now, not the future. The future will be what we call fourth-dimensional. And the only way you can get to the fourth-dimensional, which is the future, is under the theory of what we call special theory of relativity, where matter cannot go, i.e., this three-dimensional makeup that we're in. It cannot go into fourth dimensional. Let's understand it. Space-time is three-dimensional space, as I said, under the authority of one-dimensional time. All right? So in order to understand the time in which three-dimensional space arises, which was from zero dimension, you must go back into your memory. And the memory is not your brain, it's your mind. It's your mind. So your mind is subject to what they call, what scientists call adverse interference, which means that adverse interference is the ability to project as a result of the surface sensories, which are the sensories of perception, which is of taste, touch, smell, and sight. And that's based off the sensory that the world provides, i.e., the three-dimensional world that we perceive through the sensory perception, which is taste, touch, smell, and sight. Majority of the time is through sight, which is what we call visual light. And we know visual light, i.e., light, is based off electromagnetism spectrum, or electromagnetism rate, which we call electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic spectrum. All right, that's what it's called. All right, which we discuss in a second. Three dimension. Everybody pull that up on their computer. Hold that thought. And geometry, geometry means measuring, all right? And geometry is three-dimensional space 3D space, a 3D space, or rather tri-dimensional space is a mathematical space and with three values coordinated and are required to determine the position of a point. Okay. Once again, in geometry, a three-dimensional space, 3D space, three space, or rather tri-dimensional space is a mathematical space in which the value coordinate as required to determine the position of a point. Hold on for 1 second. Hello?
What up, Glenn?
What's up, bro?
I was just checking in. What's up with you?
Yeah, I'm actually doing the class.
All right. Continue. I'll holler back at you.
Okay, number one.
All right. Later.
All right. Okay, so once again, in geometry, a three-dimensional space, 3D space, or three space, or rather tri-dimensional space is a mathematical space and with three values coordinated and are required to determine a position of point. That's symbolic of what we call a square. A square is three-dimensional. Okay, a square is three-dimensional. All right, they gave you an example right here. Just look at two-dimensional. Two-dimensional will be called a plane or a surface. Going to mathematics. Mathematics. In mathematics, a plane is a two-dimensional space or flat surface. So a plane is a flat surface, also called a two-dimensional space, different from three-dimensional space, which is symbolic of what we call a square. So it said, in mathematics, a plane is a two-dimensional space or flat surface that extends indefinitely. When we say indefinitely, that means forever. All right? Forever. A plane is the two-dimensional analog of a point, zero dimension. A line, one dimension, and three-dimensional space. Okay, once again, a plane is two-dimensional analog of a point, i.e. point A to B. All right? A line represents one dimension. All right? From point A, point is zero dimension. You make a line that's called, zero dimension. You make a line that's called one dimension, point A to point B. All right? And then we know that this is qualified. We're going to go real slow for you. Once again, in mathematics, a plane is two-dimensional space or a flat space, i.e. a flat surface that extends indefinitely. A plane is two-line dimensional analog of a point, i.e. zero dimension. A line is one dimension in three-dimensional space. You hear that? A line is one-dimensional in three-dimensional space. We know three-dimensional space, as we said, is fused to fourth dimension though by way of what we call time. Once again, in space-time, it's a shift or a transition or ascension to a fourth dimensional space to a time continuum called time. All right, called time. So this is a state of what we call mitosis, evolution, mutation. All right, this is the state we're in. Let's move forward. So we define two-dimensional, which is a plane or a surface. We define three-dimensional, which is symbolic of what we call a square. It's still three-dimensional. Now let's look at zero-dimensional, all right? Let's look at zero-dimensional. Because we know one-dimensional is a line. Zero-dimensional is a point. So let's go there. Let's first define surface to get a better understanding. Plane or surface. We already defined plane, let's define the surface. In mathematics, a surface is a mathematical model of a common concept of a surface. It is a generalization of a plane, but unlike plane, it may be curved. You hear that? So a plane is generally is, as I said, generally generalized as what we call a surface. Once again, a plane is generalized as a surface, and the surface is generalized as a plane. But unlike plane, it may be curved. All right. This is analog to a curve generalizing a straight line. Why? What do they mean by this? When you're going in a straight line, and they say a line is indefinite, that means that it can never have an ending point. That's symbolic of a circle. That's something what we call curvature. All right, that's something what we call curvature. We're going to qualify it. So we define plane. We know a plane, as it's stated, just for be verbatim, a plane is two-dimensional. A plane is two-dimensional space or a flat surface that extends indefinitely, and a plane is two-dimensional analog of a point. So you can't get to a flat surface or a plane until you accomplish point i.e. zero dimension. Because when you get to a plane or flat surface, it denotes to a line, which denotes to what we call one dimension and three-dimensional space. All right, so we discussed three-dimensional, two-dimensional, which is a flat space or what we call a plane or surface, plane, surface, or flat space. And we know that that results from 0-point dimension to what we call a line dimension. All right, so let's discuss a line. In geometry, a straight line, usually abbreviated line, is an infinitely long object with no width, depth, or curvature. It means it moved in a straight line. If it had a curvature, that means that it moved in a spiral, like a helix. All right, it's moving like a helix type of form. It says so. It says so without depth or curvature. Thus, lines are one-dimensional objects. All right, a line are one-dimensional objects, though they may exist embedded in two, three, or even higher dimensional space. I repeat, the line are one-dimensional objects, though they may exist embedded in two or three or higher dimensional space. We know zero-dimensional, one-dimensional, which is the line. Then we know two-dimensional means a plane or a surface. All right. And we know three-dimensional denotes to not just a surface, but depth, weight, mass. All right. Length, width, and height. And in between that length, width, and height is what we call space. Represents mass, i.e. space-time. Space-time, which we call three-dimensional space, which we discussed already. All right. Let's go back to the three-dimensional space. I mean space-time, which is three-dimensional space, one and the same. Once again, in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses, we know what fuse is, fuse together, electricity. All right. You know what a fuse is, right? It's be able to access a transmission medium. All right. It says that in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses to three dimensions of space. And let's qualify three dimensions of space again. Okay, right here. Furthermore, in this case, these three values can be labeled by any combination of three chosen forms of terms: width, breadth, height meaning depth, and length. Once again, width meaning breadth, height meaning depth, and length. All right? You see it right there. That's what we call three-dimensional space. You already know that two-dimensional space represents a plane, a dog dreaming, or a surface. A plane, or a surface. You know, a plane or a surface, we know 0 dimension represents a point, and 1 dimension represents a line, right? We know 3-dimensional represents a 2-dimensional, a line represents, a plane represents a surface, and 3-dimensional represents length, depth, and height. All right, so let's go to what we call a line. In geometry, straight lines usually abbreviated line is an infinitely long object with no width, depth, or curvature. These lines are one-dimensional objects. Thought they may exist embedded or 2 or 3 or higher dimensional spaces, as we said a second ago. All right, so let's move further. What is time? Time is continued sequence of existence and events that occur in a apparently irreversible succession from past to the present and to the future. Once again, time is continued, i.e. time continuum, space-time, all right? Move to 4th dimensional to a time continuum from 3-dimensional space, all right? Once again, subject to the same time sequence, past, present. We're in the present and we ain't got to the future. Why? Because the future will be what we call the 4th dimension. We ain't got there yet because matter cannot enter the 4th dimension as a result of our mass, which is made of matter. All right, because it said space-time is what's used to qualify what they call special relativity theory. All right, and we know special relativity theory is E equals mc squared. We know E equals mc squared is energy matter equivalence, which means that energy and matter is equivalent because there is no density in the matter, i.e. antimatter, i.e. dark energy. Dark energy. It says that it is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events to compare the duration of events and the intervals between them, and to quantify rates of changes in quantities and material reality or in conscious experiences. You hear that? It is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them, and to quantify rates of change, quantities, and material reality. You hear that? Material reality, or in the conscious experience, i.e., you're supposed to be making sense of what's going on in this 3-dimensional world, from the past to the present to qualify the future. That's called ascension. Time is often referred to as 4th dimension along with 3 spatial dimensions. You hear that? Time is often referred to as 4th dimension along with 3 spatial dimensions. So the 3-dimensional, it's 4th dimensional by way of a continuous, by way of fusion to what we call a time continuum. We know time is past, present, and future, i.e. space-time. Let's read it one more time before I move further. In physics, space-time is a mathematical model, so it's just a model. So us to review in our minds the makeup of these models by way of reflection through the mind, not what we see with our eyes, not what we sense with our surface sensory. All right, that's all imagining. The mind has to make sense of that, and the mind is subject to darkness. Why? Because it's in a box. It's in your skull. It don't have eyes. It can't see. It don't have a retina. All right, and we know ultraviolet light is damaging. Ultraviolet rays are damaging if you stare at it long enough. Why? Because it's blinding. So in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses the 3-dimensional space-time, which we know is 4th dimensional time, by way of what we call transition, by way of what we call a time continuum based off the theory of relativity. So you need to understand the theory of relativity to make that transition to the 4th dimensional from 3-dimensional based off memory, Because we know time is based off the evaluation of the time you've been here from three-dimensional and from where you originated from. All right, so it says until the 20th century, the assumption had been that the three-dimensional geometry of the universe, they're not only talking about what we see here, but the universe. Space-time, there was the universe. Its description in terms of location, shape, distance, and direction. It was distinct from time, the measurement when events occur within the universe. However, space and time took on a new meaning with the special theory of relativity theory. All right, it took on a whole new meaning, and they yet to still understand it. All right, so let me show you how I understand it. So it says fourth dimensional continuum. Anybody know what a continuum is? Let's find out. Excuse me. Continuum or continua or continuum, i.e. continue. The word continue means to keep going. Continuum theories or models explain variations as involving gradual quantitatives, if I'm pronouncing that right, quantitatives, gradual quantitative transitions without abrupt changes or discontinuities. In contrast, categorical theories or models explain various variations using qualitativity, I'm pronouncing that word wrong, qualitatively different states. Once again, continuum theories or models explain variations as involving gradual quantitative transitions without abrupt changes or discontinuity, i.e. time continuum, from past, present to future, without any halts. Okay? So let's understand it from in physics. It says in physics, for example, space-time continuum models describe space and time as part of the same continuum rather than as separate entities. You hear that? In physics, for example, space-time continuum model describes space and time as part of the same continuum rather than a separate entity. A spectrum in physics, such as electromagnetic spectrum, is often termed as either continuous, with energy at all wavelengths, or discrete energy at only certain wavelengths. All right, once again, a spectrum is synonymous with a space-time continuum based off the electromagnetic spectrum. All right, so what is the electromagnetic spectrum? That's subject to what we call time continuum, because we know time is past, present, and future. And we know all dimensions, whereas 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, where we are in now, is subject to change, right? Is subject to change as a result of what we call fourth dimension. And fourth dimension is shifted to a new dimension under the same dimension of time, from past to present, where we are in now, which is three-dimensional, to the fourth dimensional, where the body can't go. All right? Why? Because the way to explain that is through quantum mechanics under the theory of special theory of relativity. Energy equals matter constant to the speed of light. Or what we say ether theories. Ether theory is also qualified special theory of relativity. We know ether theory deals with ether. It deals with ether. Ether is what we call antimatter. Okay? Dark energy, dark matter. They call it the fifth element, or what they call quintessence. But only for you to receive that or return to that, you must understand the fourth dimension. You must understand the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is called the Tesseract. All right? The fourth dimension is called the Tesseract. We know the Tesseract is also a square, not the square of the third dimension, because the square is also third dimension as well. But the transition through the time continuum, through the electromagnetic spectrum, which we call electromagnetic radiation, which is light, because we know light is photons. Let's review it. electromagnetic spectrum, i.e., the time continuum. All right. Time continuum. We know time continuum is to be able to move from 3 dimension to 4th dimension under the same time dimension, past, present, which we're still here now, to move to the future. All right. Humans are stuck in the 3 dimension. All right. They're stuck in 3 dimension. All right. Subject to the time continuum of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum, because we all are affected by what we call light. We know light is energy. All right. I said the electromagnetic spectrum is the range of frequency. You know, frequencies are waves. You know, waves are signals. We know signals or waves need what they need a transmission medium to travel through. That's called a vacuum. And we know vacuum is space. Once again, vacuum is space. We know, let's prove it. As you can see, space-time, as you can see, the universe, right? You can see the Earth 3 dimensional moving to 4th dimensional by what we call wormhole. Wormhole is subject to what we call gravitational singularity. All right. We know gravitational singularity is when the collapsing sun or the collapsing sun results in what we call gravitational collapse, which result in a vacuum, suction. All right. Suction. And we know a vacuum is absent a body, void a body. We know body is made of matter. So the matter or the matter that the planet is made of is going through a transition from 3 dimensional to 4th dimensional under the same time continuum by way of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum through the radiation, which is the transmission medium, which gives the ability to make the transition under the theories of special relativity and general relativity. All right, as you can see here. Involve both of them, both understandings. So electromagnetic spectrum. As you can see. If you look at the diagram, it shows you the electromagnetic spectrum. And we know the electromagnetic spectrum has to do with the ultraviolet rays that come from what we call the photon energy. We know photon energy is light, ultraviolet light, or ultraviolet radiation. All right? And we see humans are here. You see the wavelength is not, is that what we call a curvature from one singularity, right? And it travels through what they call a vacuum. We know light travels through a vacuum. We know as a transmission medium for signals or waves as a form of what we call telecommunication. All right? The telecommunication that you will receive to be able to reconnect yourself is through what they call nuclear DNA. The nuclear DNA ignites or excites to what they call the RNA. The RNA gives you the ability to what we call self-rejuvenate the DNA. You know, the DNA is called your mitochondrial DNA, which is called genomes. All right? Which is called genomes. This is called biological immortality. Biological immortality by what we call mental imaging. Mental imaging is called mind transfer, right? Your cells are being excited. They're being electrified through electricity, which are waves or energies traveling through the vacuum by way of the origin where it came from, which is the source. We are an exact result of what we call the source. We know the source is energy. Let's go back. So it says the electromagnetic spectrum is a range of frequencies, the spectrum or electromagnetic radiation, and their respective wavelengths and photon energy. So what is photon energy? You only know photon energy is from photons. Photon from Greek. Remember, the Greeks keep interpreting our story. The Greeks were the ones who first knew about ether, were assumed to be the ones who theorized about ether. It was also the Greeks who theorized about the Ethiopians, which were the actual people of the Bill, which were actually Berbers. All right. And the Berbers, or the so called Egyptians, which is the Greek word, knew about Cyrus. And we know Cyrus is a star, right? We know Cyrus is a star that they call the morning star that rises from a constellation of his own. And we know the constellation that arises from it's a star system because it's part of a planetary nebula. And we know a planetary nebula arises from a gravitational collapse of a star. And we know when the star collapses, either can become what we call a supernova or can become what we call a white dwarf. And Cyrus is called a white dwarf. Okay. Photon, photo, or photos means light. It's an elementary particle that is in quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation, such as light and radio waves, and the force carriers for the electromagnetic force. Did you hear that? Photons are massless, so they always move at the speed of light in vacuum. You hear that? In vacuum. We know vacuum is void of body. Once again, the vacuum is void of body. When door went up into that electricity, we know electricity is lightning. We know lightning is electromagnetic energy. All right, by way of a vacuum, which acts as a tunnel to travel through. You know what I'm saying? So, but he himself doesn't have melanin, right? We know melanin has the ability to be able to protect you from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. We know the sun is energy, a big ball of mass energy. All right. So if the sun is a big ball of mass energy and you have melanocyte, i.e., melanin, to be able to protect you from that energy, but at the same time, you are that energy that's trapped here on this plane as a result of your composition, i.e., your three-dimensional understanding of yourselves. Let's move further. Okay, so we know that three-dimensional moves into what we call the fourth dimension, and the fourth dimension is subject to the same time continuum. And the time continuum is subject to what we call the wavelength. We know wavelength is based off the electromagnetic energy or the ultraviolet radiation that travels in what they call a medium, transmission medium, and forms a vacuum for that light to travel through, which is information. All right, waves, frequency, from gamma rays to radio waves. Once again, from gamma rays to radio waves. When you hear radio, those frequencies, those waves, and when you hear it, what happens? It's called a message. When you hear, you just don't turn the radio and hear silence, do you? It relays a message. All right, but who receives the message? The mind. The mind is the transmitter. The mind is made up of what they call neurons, and neurons is based off what we call neurons deal with what's called. Let's look it up. Just be on the safe side. Before I move on, let's look up brain. Just look at the brain right quick. Okay. Okay. A brain or encephalon, which is the organ, serves as a center of the nervous system in all vertebrates and most invertebrate animals. The brain is the largest cluster of neurons, somata, in the body and is typically located in the head, usually near the organs of special sense, such as vision, hearing, and olfaction. All right. So vision and hearing has a lot to is under authority what we call the brain. We know the brain is an organ that serves as a center for the nervous system. All right. Your nervous system is your veins where the blood and your cells travel through. In biology, the nervous system is a highly complex part of an animal that coordinates its actions and sensory information by transmitting signals to and from different parts of the body. So all the surface sensories that you use for perception, i.e. taste, touch, smell, sight, which are all sensory used for perception, are all sent to what we call the brain, which is the nervous, which is the nervous system with active on what we call neurons. So what is a neuron? I got so much with my head, so I have to go back to make sure that I don't give you the wrong information. Within a neuron system, a neuron or nerve cell is an electrically excitable cell. You hear that? So a neuron is a nerve cell. We know a nerve cell has a nucleus, right? And the nucleus has all the genetic material or information that it needs to do whatever it does based off the excitability, which means it can be charged. All right, it can be charged. It says within the nervous system or nerve cell, it is the electrically excitable cell that fires electrical signals called action potentials across the neural network. Neurons communicate with other cells via synapses, specialized in connections that commonly use minute amount of chemical neurotransmitters to pass the electrical signal from presynaptic neurons to the target cell through the synaptic gap. Okay, we know neurotransmitter is called the space between the space or the vacuum. Let's just qualify it. I'm new at this, you know what I'm saying? But based off my understanding of what I'm reading, it's pretty much on point. A neurotransmitter signaling molecule secreted by a neuron to affect another cell across a synapse. The cell receiving the signal or target cell may be another neuron, but could also be a gland or muscle cell. All right. So we know neurons or neural cells is give the ability for signals to travel to all sensory aspects of the body, which we call surface sensory, which is taste, touch, smell, and sight. All right. But the biggest visualizer that we have as a part of our sensory makeup is the eyes. All right. It's the eyes, the visual light that we see through our eyes based off of perception that we perceive as a three-dimensional world. But the mind has to make sense of that, right? And your mind, parts of the brain has to make sense of that. And the only way the brain can make sense is by mental evaluation. Once again, by mental evaluation. We know mental evaluation is due by mental imaging. All right. Mental imaging is called mental transfer or mind transferring. All right. Mind transferring. All right. So when Jesus was trying to tell you about moving from one dimension to the next dimension, which we call zero dimension, one dimension, two dimension, three dimension, we are in now, to the fourth dimension, this takes a mental understanding. It takes a mental comprehension. It takes a mental interpretation to make that transition. Because everything is not based upon the brain. The brain don't have no eyes, right? The brain don't have no eyes. The brain can't think. It's just an organ. It's just a host. It's just emulating what the mind thinks, and the mind is not attached to your body. All right, mental, memory. Mental deals with memory. All right, that's what we call, or what scientists call, adverse interference, because the brain doesn't know uh, the uh, the brain doesn't know the what they call the cause. It just knows the effect, not the cause. When you're born to this world from 0 dimension to 3 dimensional, when you come in, it's already here. So that's the effect, but not the cause. And no one goes back to remember the cause because they don't know the cause. They don't want you to know the cause. Why? Because the one who don't want you to know the cause is the one that caused it all. All right? They caused all this drama in the first place, which created the effect. There's a saying, as I always say, time never was when you were not. If time become when you begin to count, time never was when you were not. If time become when you begin, the time will become when you will be no more. So we can't let them dictate our time, our beginning here on this plane, which we call 3 dimensional. Because if you do, then there will be no 4th dimensional ascension. Why? How we know that? Let's go and understand 4th dimension. Fourth dimension. We already discussed the concept of 0 dimension, point, 1 dimension, as I said, a line. 2 dimension represents a plane of surface. 3 dimension represents length, width, and height. All right. On to the 4th dimension, which we call the Tesseract. You notice in the movie Tesseract, when all the superheroes start to dematerialize, they didn't know what was going on, right? They didn't know what was going on. All their composition, as far as what they understood as far as matter, was governed by that Tesseract. That's why he was trying to protect it. They didn't want whatever that guy named to get that Tesseract because it had the ability to be able to change time. Okay? They were called the Time Stone. All right? Or the Philosopher's Stone. Why do I keep coming back here? Tesseract. In geometry, a tesseract is a 4th-dimensional analogous of a cube, right? We know a cube is a square, right? The tesseract is to the cube as the cube is to the square. Once again, the tesseract is to a cube as the cube is to a square. That denotes what we call self-rejuvenation, what we call autoscopy, making a copy of the cell. All right, a copy of the cell. It says, just as the surface of the cube consists of 6 square faces, the hypersurface of the tesseract consists of 8 cubical cells. The tesseract is one of the 6 convex regular 4 polyotypes. I don't expect you to understand all that. I just want to show you, based off my understanding of what they present to you, the shift from 3 dimensional to the 4th-dimensional under what they call the geometry term called the tesseract, under the same time continuum. So let's find an example that we can see for ourselves to show you the transition that our makeup is undertaking. As you can see, this is an example of a tesseract, fourth dimensional tesseract, all right, in the shape of what they call Dali's cross. The Dali's cross is symbolic of what we call the Latin cross, all right? It's called the Latin cross. This is an example of a shift from three-dimensional to fourth dimensional by way of what we call vacuum, space-time, gravitational singularity, i.e. wormhole. Let me give you a better example. Once again, the construction of the hypercubes can be imagined in the following way. One dimension, 2 points, A and B can be connected to becoming a line. We know line is one dimension. Given a new line, subject A and B. This is point 0, this is point, that's a line, as you can see. Right? So we see one dimension, 2 points A and B can be connected to become a line, given A and B being distance, which means space, which we'll see in a second. Point 0, then point 1, a line, which creates distance, which creates space, all right? Two dimension, two parallel lines segmented at A and B and C and D, separated by a distance of an A and B and can be connected to become a square with the corners marked A, B, and C and D. So we see point 0 dimension, 1 dimension, you see 2 dimension. All right, that's 2 dimension right there. Now let's look at 3 dimension. All right, so we know 0 dimension, one dimension is A to B, 2 dimensions A, B, C to D. That means it represents a square. 3-dimensional, it says 3-dimensional, 2 parallel squares, A, B, and C, and E, F, G, separated by a distance of A and B, can be connected to become a cube with the corners marked A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's known as a tesseract. 4th dimension under the same time continuum. All right, as you can see it. Watch that move from 0 dimension to 4th dimension. Zero. Line, 2-dimensional. Square, 3-dimensional. Cube, 3-dimensional. Tesseract, 4th dimension. That's called space-time. Gravitational singularity, space-time singularity, or what we call a singularity, and in the Talmud it's called cosmogony, the birth of our universe. This is how it all happened. Okay? To 4th dimensional. 4th dimensional is 2 parallel cubes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1 cube, and I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, another cube, separated by a distance of A and B, can be connected to become a tesseract with the corners marked as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. All right. However, this parallel position of the 2 cubes, such that their 8 corresponding pairs of vertices are each separated by a distance of A and B, can only be achieved in a space of 4 or more dimensions. All right, so you see dot to 1, 2 parallel lines, represents 1 dimension. To 2 dimensions, 2 parallel lines. To 3 dimension, a square. To a 4th dimension, 2 squares, which represents tesseract from 0-dimensional to 4th dimensional to the same time continuum. All right, to the same time continuum. All right, and we know another example of the tesseract. I just say tesseract can be unfolded into 8 cubes into 3-dimensional space, just as the cube can be unfolded into 6 squares into 2-dimensional space. We know 2-dimensional space is a plane or a surface. All right, a plane or a surface from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional to 4th dimensional through the time continuum, which is past, present, which is 3-dimensional, onto 4th dimensional, as we see here under the tesseract. And the shape of this tesseract brings me to here. As we showed you a second ago. Crucifixion under geometry, under what they call the hypercube, the hypercubes. Crucifixion, a non-traditional surrealist portrait of crucifixion. It's depicted fixed Christian on a polyhedron net of a Tesseract hypercube. It is one of the best known paintings for the later period of his career. So it shows the Tesseract with Jesus Christ's arm represents his moving from three-dimensional to fourth-dimensional, known as the Tesseract. All right? Known as the Tesseract. All right? So this represents the teachings that were taught in what we call the Roman Catholic churches. You know, the Roman Catholic churches are the Latin churches. You know, the Latin churches were the ones responsible for the creation of what we call the Latin cross. All right? It's the secrets that the churches keep from you. All under Pope Francis. So if they give you the abstract, I'm giving you the concrete. The Latin Church is the largest autonomous Sejurist particular church within the Catholic Church. So the Latin Church is the Catholic Church, and the classic Catholic Church is the way you get your story involving all those who fall under the doctrine of what we call Christianity. And Christianity is an abstract doctrine because it doesn't deal with any true science, dealing with physics of your physical makeup and the transition to the non-physical world. And the non-physical world is called the fourth dimensional world, or the fourth dimension, which Jesus is trying to get you to understand. All right? So the Latin Church is symbolic of the Catholic Church. And we know the Catholic Church is symbolic of what we call, the Catholic Church or the Latin Church is where we get the Latin cross. As you can see, Latin cross or crux amicia is a type of cross of which the vertical beam sticks above the cross beam, with three upper arms either equally long or with the vertical topmost arm short than the two horizontal arms and always with much longer bottom arm. If you stood straight up and held your arms up, it would look like that of what we call the Latin cross. We call it the T nomad, all right, or the crucis globus, all right. The circle and the cross, I call it the talk. All right. In history, it says here, in a broad sense, the Latin cross is used to represent all of Christianity and Christendom, given that it teaches that Jesus sacrificed himself for humanity upon it, atoning for the sins of the world. Okay? Atoning for the sins of the world. So we see the Latin cross, i.e., the cross that Jesus was crucified on, representing him dying for the sins of the world, wasn't based off the abstract story, but it's based off him dying or giving an example of the transition that we all must make. Because dying is just a transition to the fourth dimension. Once again, dying is a transition to the fourth dimension because after from the body is present with Christ. You know, the body is matter. You're not made of, you're not this that you so-called say you are. You are energy. Because our energy, this body can do what it does. Without energy, you wouldn't be able to think, to understand why the body does what it does. So it all involves the mind, but we don't use our mind because everything is based off the interpretation that the brain comes to based off our perception that does not involve the mind and involve our surface sensitivities, which is taste, touch, smell, and sight. All right. This is what dictates our past, our present, and our future by what we see, but not by what we think. Thinking comes from a mental faculty. Okay. And this is what I'm trying to get you to think. To think. All right. Well, this Latin cross. Yeah. Okay, so as we can see here, it says the Latin cross was symbolic of the sacrifice that Jesus made for humanity upon atoning for the sins of the world. All right. Your sin of the world is not understanding who you are in reference to your relationship with Jesus and his Father. All right. And we know Jesus representing the Father's only concern was about his church and those who were inside the church. All right. Those who were inside the church going back to church. Once again, the Anglo-Saxon name church come from the family name who resided near a church. All right. It's also said that the English word or surname is Sarais, which is derived from the Greek word Kyriakon, which means house of the Lord. Okay, house of the Lord. So if church and Sarais and Kirk is symbolic of what we call Cyrus, because Cyrus is the same word as Kirkos, which I showed you here. The English surname Cyrus is a several possible origin, and it says it denotes to Kairos, which means son or Lord. So if you're a son or Lord, you must be a part of the house, Lord, because the Lord has sons. The Lord has sons. He has descendants. All right, where you want to look at from the abstract or the concrete, because we are descendants of our ancestors who come from the stars through our nuclear DNA. All right, our nuclear DNA. How I prove it? Let's show you this in closing. This is all in my book, my pamphlet, or my guide, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to close out on this. The word church comes from Somerset. Everybody see that? The surname church was first found in Principality in Somerset, but also many counties in England. One of the first records of the name was Thomas Tesseract, who was listed in the subsidiary rolls of Worcester in 1296. So once again, the surname church was first found in the Principality of what we call Somerset, which brings me to Cheddar Man. Cheddar Man is a human fossil found in Gouts Cave in Cheddar Gorge in Somerset, England. The skeleton remains date to around the mid to the late 9th millennium, all right, BC. Once again, the 9th millennium BC corresponds to the Mesolithic period, and it appears that he died at a violent death, whatever they say he died with. Let's go into his genetics. No, remember, we know genomes deal with mitochondrial DNA, which gives us the ability to be able to cell divide into from 0 dimension to 3 dimensions, which we are in now. You know what I'm saying? On to 4th dimension though. And we know that 0 dimension derives from nuclear DNA. Once again, the third dimension derives from nuclear DNA because we know that extraterrestrials are what we call prokaryocytes. You have karyocytes and prokaryocytes. The karyocytes is what you find in what we call DNA, genome. They have a nucleus which have all the genetic material for that cell to unfold like a flower. Versus prokaryocytes does not have a nucleus. All right. So a prokaryocyte is what we call an extraterrestrial or an intelligent being. Let's look up nuclear DNA before I close. So this is what they're based their understanding on the genetics of the progeny of our Anglo-Saxon ancestors. All right. This is what they use. Nuclear DNA or nuclear deoxyribonucleic acid is the DNA contained within each cell nucleus of a eukaryotic organism. Once again, nuclear DNA contained in the cell nucleus of a eukaryotic organism. It encodes for the majority of the genome in eukaryotes with microDNA and plasmid DNA coded for the rest. It adheres to the Mendelian inheritance with information coming from two parents, i.e. uniparent, and one male and one female, rather than matrilineal through the mother, as in mitochondrial DNA. I repeat, nuclear DNA or NDA or nuclear deoxyribonucleic acid is the DNA contained within each cell nucleus of a eukaryotic organism. It encodes for the majority of the genome, i.e. genetic material, and in eukaryotes with mitochondrial DNA and plasmid DNA coded for the rest. It adheres to the Mendelian inheritance with information coming from two parents, one male and one female, rather than matrilineal through the, you hear that? Rather than matrilineal through the mother as in mitochondrial DNA. All right? So that takes you back here to Tellerman. Okay, here we go. Cheddarman, Y-DNA belongs to an ancient sister branch of modern haplogroup group 12, L38 and 12A2. The 12A2 subplant is still extant in males of the modern British Isles and across other parts of Europe. The mitochondrial DNA of Cheddarman was discovered to be haplogroup U5B1 by Natural History Museum studying in 2018 using next generation sequencing. All right. So as you can see, they use nuclear DNA to discover the origin of the what they call anthropology and the findings in regard to the fossils found in Cheddar Gorge, which happen to be the descendants of our ancestors were in regards to the illustrious history of the Middle Ages that goes back to what we call the Athens or the Anglo-Saxon burghers. You know what I'm saying? So there you have it. Mitochondria DNA is the unfoldment of our cell division into the three-dimensional world. But from where we begin is where we will return. And that's what we call zero-point energy. In order to understand that, you must understand what we call space-time. And let's go back to that to close. You know, space-time is subject to gravitational singularity or space-time singularity, what we call singularity, which is what we call cosmogony, the study of how our universe was created. And the only way you can understand how that was created is through understanding general theory of relativity. All right, but what's the point of understanding general theory of relativity without understanding special theory of relativity? Because the special theory of relativity is the other side of the general theory of relativity. All right, and that takes the understanding of what we call mass energy, i.e., zero energy equivalence, zero energy and mass equivalence. Not that special theory. Special theory of relativity. And I'll close on this. All right, it's in closing. In physics, special theory of relativity, or special relativity for short, is a time scientific theory it's a scientific theory of relationship between space and time. You hear that? It's a scientific theory between space and time. We know space-time is the three-dimensional, space-time is the three-dimensional, once again, I want to go back to it. It says space-time, i.e., the three-dimensional, is governed by what we call a time continuum, which is past, present, and to the future to what we call fourth dimensional, in which we're making the transition to right now by way of what we call energy mass equivalence, which means that we must enter by way of 0 point energy, right? We must enter at 0 point energy so that we can travel at the speed of light. We know light is energy, all right? And light travels through a vacuum, i.e., a black hole, i.e., space time, i.e., gravitational singularity, i.e., cosmogony. And with that, I'll end. And let me just show you vacuum. Speed, light, and vacuum. Vacuum is a space devoid of matter. You hear that? A space time. So once you run out of space, you run out of matter, i.e., this matter that we see on this side of the equation, which is something what we call gravitational. We talk when we speak about gravitational singularity or space-time singularity, or what we call the singularity, to what we call energy matter equivalence, or special theory of relativity, or what we call 0 point energy. And with that, I'll say peace.